Welcome to ReReview, where we watch movies from our past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. On this episode, we're discussing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It was released in 1984, directed by Steven Spielberg. It stars Harrison Ford, Kate Capshaw, and Ke Huy Quan. The second movie in the series where we see Indy deal with an ancient cult and shenanigans ensue. Now, this is a fair warning. We're spoiling a 39-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. You know, as movie intros go, this one sucked.
Anything
Was that
goes.
too harsh? Yeah, anything goes. Good Lord, like a whole dancing sequence with just music and what just happened. Can someone help me get through the first 8 minutes of this movie?
Clearly an homage to big studio pictures of the 50s.
Except for worse. But I mean, and I know we're obviously going to be talking about the other movies as we progress or whatever, but even comparing this one to the first one, and I totally understand what it was trying to go for, but it missed the mark on the fact that I don't feel like that was appropriate for an Indiana Jones movie because it didn't have any sense of mystery or anything like that to it. It was horribly choreographed. The song was terrible, and there wasn't a single Asian person in Shanghai during that entire number. There's a bunch of fake ones, but there was no real ones. It was really bad, and it went forever.
That's the thing. I feel like it just lasted so long.
But so did the 50s musicals. I think it was really designed to evoke that kind of thing. Even though the reverse things where there's a lot of movies where they're lowering somebody into water, but they reverse it so that they're coming out of it. They even did that in another movie recently.
So I guess I've asked this. So back when we all watched this in 1984, because we were all in the theaters watching it then, was your first reaction like, wow, this intro is amazing. It is a throwback to the 1950s, and I really appreciate what Steven Spielberg was going for here. Yes. Or were you like me, and I actually really just watched it on USA?
No,
and
when I was
probably
6
never
years
really
old,
paid attention to that scene.
When I was however old I was, and I made it until they started pulling hearts out, and then my dad yanked me out of the theater, but... Yes.
Wait, hold on. There's that. I hear this is like family trauma, is what I just heard.
Yeah, I'm actually very unhappy about it. I wish I would not have got yanked out, but it's fine.
Too risque, huh? I mean, that's pretty deep into the movie. We'll get there, but ultimately, the violence that was portrayed on film was not good for your family.
Yeah, no, my dad stuck his hand over my face to try to shield what I was seeing, and I think that must have been while they were dropping the guy into the fire, and then as soon as they started yanking hearts out, he grabbed me by my collar and yanked me out of that theater. And
wait, but had you seen the first movie at that point?
No,
because Nazi's faces melted off. The heart was the line he drew.
I don't really have any recollection of seeing any other. I mean, maybe this is the only one that I remember because I was yanked out of the theater, but this is the only movie I remember. I mean, I think I have images of Return of the Jedi in my head, like the speeder bike chase, thinking, wow, that's so cool, but that could have been a re-release. But this is the only vivid memory I have of seeing movie as a child.
So when did you see it in full for the first time?
Oh, years later, yeah,
okay,
rental.
But did you have a sense that you weren't allowed to watch it because of what happened when you were younger? It was something forbidden? Because I feel like that happened to me when it came to like Chucky or something like that, where I wasn't supposed to. It was because they would do something like that. You were mentally was I'm not supposed to watch this, or you're the rebel Bobby who's I'm gonna fucking watch this, you know?
No, I had a conversation with my dad saying why'd you yank me out of that? I understand it's a movie. I enjoy watching the art. Even back then, I just remember saying it's a movie. I know it's not real. Let's just watch it. And he's like, oh, okay. He believed me at that point. And so I don't think there was an issue. I do remember though, I wasn't allowed to watch Back to the Future because of excessive swearing.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, was there? I don't remember it being that
No,
bad.
I don't remember any excessive swearing at all. But
Was it the banana joke? Was that too far?
I was in an oppressive household because I remember like my we tried to watch like bed knobs and broomsticks or something like that, and my mom thought it was witchcraft, so she's like, no, you can't watch this.
Well, now that we've gone down this deep dive, so at what point did you realize that you appreciate 1950s homages to old song and dance films?
My original viewing, I was like, wow, this is definitely a nod to the heyday of studio filmmaking in the 50s. Wow.
little Bobby, like, wow.
Okay, I'm glad little Bobby was far advanced than most movie watchers. Oh man, for me it hurt. I mean, that leads us into a whole poison antidote gag scene in Indy trying to escape. We meet Willie Scott and her character, who just is an incessant screamer and is clearly shocked and in awe by everything that exists in the world that is around her, while somehow they also make her someone who's obsessed with money and diamonds, and that's apparently the only thing she cares about. Like, what is going on with this movie?
It's funny because like I feel like if this movie were made like closer to like the modern era, they probably would have done something a little bit different with her character. Like maybe she would have been trying to pull like a hustle over the whole thing. Like she would have been trying to steal the diamond from the beginning, and like they probably would have did something different with her character. I can only imagine this poor woman's like audition,
or maybe double crossed Indy many times.
Yeah, like, but for whatever reason, like I don't know what happened with this movie and their development of female characters, because like the first movie, I feel like they did a decent job at developing. What was her character's name?
Marion Ravenwood.
Marion, yeah, like they did a decent job developing her character for the most part. I mean, she was still unfortunately too much of a damsel in distress, but you kind of got a feeling like she was like a woman of the world or whatever. Like she owned her own bar and like you felt like she could probably hold her own for the most part.
Yep.
And then you had was it Elsa in the third movie? Like again, like fairly competent female characters, but this movie they were just like, nah. We're not doing that.
Well, it seems like they were clearly trying to like take the first movie and be like, okay, like what different can we do to like turn it on its head and make it not like a copy of the first movie, right?
So everything.
Yeah, everything. So even the fact that like Indy basically like his quest, his MacGuffin is presented to him. He's not like, oh wow, this is something I really need to find and put in a museum like the first one. It's just, he stumbles on it essentially. He's given it instead of like copying the first movie and saying like, hey, there's this artifact I know we're looking for. Like, let's go find it.
Well, a couple things. Can we pour one out for, I think it was Chen, his homie who we knew for only a few seconds, who said they've been on so many adventures together.
I want to see
those?
the Chen.
I want to see those stories.
Yeah, I want to see the Chen movie. That guy,
like,
I
he was there for Indy
that
and just gets killed. Oh, it hurts my heart. And then also, so we get through that. He's getting on a plane that belongs to Lao She. But before that, we meet the best character in the whole film, Dan Aykroyd. Playing Weber. Can we where was Dan Aykroyd in this entire movie? Can we ask for more Dan Aykroyd?
I said it when he came up or whatever, like I would easily switch him out for Willie Scott. Like I don't need the female love interest in this because she was basically useless for the entire thing. A Dan Aykroyd side character, that would have been amazing.
Why didn't Dan Aykroyd even get like a medium shot? Like much less a close up. Like they're like, oh, we don't want people to realize that this might be Dan Aykroyd. Let's like film him like 60 feet away.
I mean, I kind of get it, right? Like it's kind of like in modern movies, watching Guardians or whatever recently, there's a couple of characters that, when you see them, you instantly think of the person and not, it's just a character. And I feel like that happens with cameos sometimes. So like I do kind of get the insistence on if all of a sudden you had Dan Aykroyd pop up or whatever, it'd be almost like if you ever watched like TV shows in the 90s, it's kind of become like a meme online or whatever. They kind of joke about it, like where like you'd have the main character walking down the hallway and they'd bump into another character. The character would turn around and it turns out it would be the guest star for the episode or whatever. And everyone would clap and cheer like, oh my God, it's John Stamos or whatever, Like, I feel like that probably would have happened in this moment. Like, oh, it's Dan Aykroyd. Like, though the only way you could do better is if you had the rest of the Ghostbusters there too. Like, we're all part of the crew.
That'd be amazing. Well, he gets on this plane and the pilots jump out. And then we get probably one of the most quintessential, believable things that could ever happen in stunt cinema. A raft can be exploded in the sky and it will float you down safely onto Earth.
Mythbusters don't lie.
No, I want to tell you right now, this movie is the very reason why I take a raft with me on every flight I go on. I have been taught that this is the way to survive a plane crash, and I will make it.
But we're not sinking, we're crashing.
I'm still bugged by the fact that these two pilots just jumped out of the plane rather than shooting a sleeping Indiana Jones. Like, that plane wasn't free. That's a waste of assets, my friend. Like, why?
Oh, you old businessman.
They just throw them overboard.
No,
shooting, you might shoot a hole in your own plane and crash it still.
They're not flying very high.
They could have thrown him overboard, and we do get that epic crash flame as it hits the side of the mountain. I think we said not to nitpick the effects of a 1984 film, but this one is a little bit of a doozy.
No. Back to the Future came out 1 year after this. I'm nitpicking on that fire effect. That was, I think I did a better effect back when I was like 12.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, there were some pretty bad, egregious effects in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, they survived this, and they have a miracle pocket where they could store lots of things. So they have like changes of clothes and different things.
They went to the Pancot gift store.
No, that's before. Hold on. This is even. This is them going to the village first, right? Didn't they get a change of clothes somewhere in there?
It's like they have to go on their journey. It's like the Indiana Jones ride. You just go to the gift shop after you leave.
We get into the jungle. They're just trying to live the dream. We have the most eclectic animal adventure with Willie screaming at the sight of every moving creature. And I think we saw a lot of things that may not cohabitate in a jungle ecosystem of the kind that they were in.
That poor woman, I swear, she probably had to scream at like everything. That was...
But how many takes? How many scream takes?
Like, at that point, I legit was waiting for it to be a comedy and one of them was going to start talking. Like, literally, she's going to hit the owl and the owl's going to be like, who are you screaming at?
Good night, Ned.
Yeah, exactly. So they're amigos. That's exactly what that scene was.
Do you think she was cast because she was a good screamer? They're like, ooh, you can really scream. You're going to be perfect here.
That was a prerequisite. It had to have been. Like, the only thing she didn't do was a Wilhelm scream.
I mean, it was in the movie, though.
It was in the movie, but she didn't do it.
There was one scene, I think, where they were in the jungle, and then we see the flying bats, and that looked actually real to me. And I thought that, was cool.
I think they were real, actually. Although they're fruit bats, not vampire bats.
Do we? I mean, okay, thank you. And now they're not cool anymore. Now I don't enjoy them because they lost their vampire status. They're eating. They meet the what is the kid who's in charge of everything?
Short Round? Or are you talking the Maharaja?
Oh, the Maharaja.
Yeah, exactly. And, we get a really weird dinner scene where they just made everything awkward about all the food that was being presented to them. Yeah. These decisions are so, I guess they're so 1983. If this movie came out in 1984. That's just how people were in the early 80s.
One-upmanship.
But like, it was just that mentality of, the exotic Middle East and the Asian, cultures and whatnot. Like I don't know. Like, I don't know if this was just a case of, Mickey Rooneyism where like, they were just like, trying to make it as outlandish as possible. Yeah, or if maybe there was, giving them the benefit of the doubt, did they like go to some, consultant or something like that where like, what's the most outrageous thing that is actually, eaten in these cultures or whatever, even if it's not commonplace and we can use those. I mean, I still remember being like Shanghai at a restaurant and seeing people like eating chicken feet for the first time. And I was like, wow, like, I didn't think there was anything to eat there. So I'm just guessing, like, did Steven Spielberg fly to India and come across some instance of these, or is it literally just like, it just feels like something that you would see in like a 50s movie where like everyone would be in like brown face and they would just be eating it was the most outlandish thing. I mean, like they're eating like chilled monkey brains or something for dessert. And I'm just like, this just like feels like I said while we're watching, I can't imagine this did well in India. Like they're probably just watching this like, what the hell?
Yeah, I think that it was just done for shock and awe, regardless of where the story was placed.
But I think that was it. All these things kind of just, I'll say, with the pacing and the way each set piece worked, it's almost like I felt like I was getting beat over the head with the concept. Like they show it to you once and then they repeat it over and over. I mean, they literally gave us a 10-course meal, it felt like. Whereas like, here's the next oddity food item and here's the next one. And the way they treat the action pieces feel the exact same way to me. Or it's just like, well, I guess here we go again, kind of just rinse and repeat the same action thing. I mean, at this point in the movie is where we're supposed to believe there's some little sexual tension between Willie and Indiana. Were you ever convinced?
No, there was nothing organic about it. Like, at least if it was a case of, and having watched this, I mean, I'll say this right now, I haven't watched this movie since the first time I watched it. It's one of those movies where like it's a one and done. I didn't need to go back and watch it. So like watching it now, the way that it started with the beginning of the movie with their relationship, because he took her hostage. He was like threatening to kill her, whether she believed it to be real or not. Again, they just met just then. Like there was that kind of dynamic, and I thought they would probably play off of it. Like, very much like, constant arguing, and somehow that would lead to things. And they kind of hinted at it, but it felt so inorganic between the two actors or whatever that by time, like it like literally like once the music cued, I was like, well, in 5 seconds, they're going to be kissing, like, and there's no reason for it whatsoever. It was an organic situation. Like what was he, like mating rituals or whatever he was talking about? There, it was like that. What was that, like 1935's like, pickup line or whatever? Like that's what gets the ladies going. Like
he wanted to study her nocturnal habits.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one of the James Bond movies where like he's talking about like watching birds, and then they eat like there's no tomorrow, and that's supposed to like lead into some like over the top suggestive kind of situation.
And is there an element here where it does feel like they're trying to make Indy very, very Bondish in a way?
A little bit at the beginning. I felt like that was kind of like the beginning sequence. Like I will say, like that entire sequence, dance aside, felt almost completely a moot point to the entirety of the story. Whereas like the first movie, like it had, like you got to meet Bartok. What was it? Whatever, the French guy. So like it kind of played into the rest of the movie. You never saw any of the rest of these characters again. It was basically just a chance to kidnap a singer dancer lady that he brings with her for the rest of the journey, but it didn't play into it. And then like it did have kind of like short of like they were playing like cards or something. It did have kind of like that Bond-esque feel to it. Even the way he walks into frame kind of felt a little bit like what I'd imagine Sean Connery doing.
Sure. And I thought the whole like dynamics of the Lazy Susan kind of table thing was interesting.
Well, I mean, you wanted the diamonds and the coins and the stone.
Yeah, and the antidote.
And the antidote. No, I mean, that was cool. I mean, with the camera going back and forth to kind of move between the different groups. I do get that. We talked about their sexual tension. It never really happens at this point. They get into a scenario where we have, another I guess I'll call it a good indie gag when we think of the big rolling ball. Maybe this moment in this movie was here, them in the closed room with the spikes coming down and her having to reach through the bugs to get them released. But Matt, I think you pointed out something that seemed a little obvious, that it would never actually fully close on them.
I mean, it couldn't have if like it would have been one thing if like you would have seen like here's
They
my
didn't
thing
have
is,
holes in the ground
no,
where the spikes would go?
no, there was no holes. Well, at first I thought that's what the case was, because when it starts, the ceiling starts coming down, the little cone shaped thing starts coming down, and the spikes are down, and you see the holes in the ground. So I'm like, okay, that's clearly a case of, it's going to go down. But then I was like, but like there's bodies in there. If they died the same way, they would have gotten crushed or something when it went all the way down. But then that also means that the spikes were pointless. They literally could have just had the ceiling coming straight down and crushed them to death, and that would have been just as effective. But they're like, no, we need spikes. And then Spielberg was like, no, I need more spikes. And now the spikes are coming from the ground too. So it's like, there's no way that both those could have collided, or else it would have broke the spikes, which means there would have been no more spikes. I was like, all you just do is just like go between the spikes and squat down. Short round would have been fine. Like, it didn't make any sense logically. Like the giant boulder, I get, but this made no sense.
I feel like he should have said, I got a bad feeling about this.
Oh no.
No? You can't do that crossover? Dang it. They get out of there. They get to the temple. We see, I think, the big set piece with Mola Ram, who ends up sacrificing this dude by taking out his heart and is beating the quintessential scene you discussed, the one that was too graphic for movie theaters, according to your dad. I will tell you, when I remember seeing that as a kid, it freaked me out. I was like, oh, what a weird thing for a heart to be beating outside the body, and then you see the person's chest cavity sealed right back up. But Matt pointing out the most obvious thing: how did he get through the rib cage? But whatever. He somehow
went under it like a chef's kiss, kind of like pull.
I didn't really see that. That does feel very Mortal Kombat, but no, he just went straight in. But we do get the kind of cool scene of him being lowered into the lava pit and then catching fire. I will tell you, I do like the lava swirl. I thought it looked cool. Kind of wanted to touch it because I figured it's just water. Anybody else?
It was an
The whole
interesting
place
effect.
was like, it was like quite a set piece of a multi-layered, like them up above, seeing down below, and then the whole like, I don't know what it's called, like the throne room section of it, and the cavern below, and all these like mechanical like closing doors, and yeah, it was quite a thing.
And it really leads. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
It very much harkened back to, again, like, and I get it. That's kind of the thing about these movies, is it's very much George Lucas's childhood, watching these kind of serials and movies or whatever. Like, it felt like a set piece you would see in like, a 1920s, movie. Cause like it's almost over engineered in a way.
Sure.
That like it's so over the top that you're like,
right.
It makes no sense that you'd go through this amount of effort to build something like this underneath the ground. Like building, like, what was it, like a statue of was it Shiva or Kali or whatever, with its hands extended and chains coming out of it to hold the cage or whatever. It was so like ornate, but it's very much what you would see back in like, the Flash Gordon era of movie making.
Sure.
Well, I guess in that Flash Gordon era, because, after we get through this, we get to what I feel were my notes were: cart scene is so long, followed by my next note: bridge scene is so long. Like the cart scene alone, I felt like they were doing the cart chase, after they battle and get some fights, and Indy drinks from a thing that looks like an orc head from Lord of the Rings, and turns into totally looks like an orc's head, right? And then he gets all possessed, but then he gets unpossessed because of fire, and then there's fighting, and then the cart scene happens, and it just goes on and on like a Journey song.
But I like the cart sequence because it looked to me like it was like a whole big mash of different kinds of effects and stuff. Like we talk about like the pre-computer, like wizardry. And so like, I'm assuming like they had like a model of all this stuff and like a giant, like, I don't know, like train set that they were just kind of messing with. And
but I do agree though that with Austin on the aspect that like it would have been nice if they would have chosen like shorten, the cart scene and focus on the bridge scene because that's the final set piece because it is the final set piece, or focus on the cart scene and make that the final set piece and just either ignore the bridge or make it something that's just kind of like an end piece, like have it so that what the hell was his name, Mola Ram or whatever,
Molaram.
like they think that they took him out or whatever, and then he comes up on the bridge and he's threatening to cut the bridge or something. But because they have these two major set pieces bookended in this movie, it feels so long and drawn out unnecessarily, unfortunately. Like I would have been fine. Like, I could have seen the cart sequence been incredibly fun if you had much more dynamic camera shots or whatever, but it should have been like the final thing. Or you say like, okay, this is only going to last like 3 to 5 minutes and it's done. But it was a solid, 10-ish minutes?
Right.
From beginning to end?
I think
it felt like an eternity.
I mean, one of the things that I think this movie is a lot of like style over substance, so to speak. I think a lot of things are in this movie because they look cool and they were fun to film and they look neat on a movie screen, but not necessarily because they're practical or could ever happen in any kind of living world. I just think it's like they're neat and they're fun, and this is a fun little adventure outside of the world of physics and reality, and let's have fun with it and enjoy it. And
like if you compared it though, we're going to compare it. Like I'll bring up a movie that we're going to watch, but we haven't talked about yet, which is Last Crusade. If I compared this to the truck car chase in the first one, or the tank chase with the horses in the third one, like it just doesn't hold the same level of quality to me.
You can't look at the third one yet. We haven't watched it. It doesn't count. only can compare against the first one. But I do feel like we're getting into there's a little bit of a drop off here if we had to compare the two, is what we're saying.
It is what it is, I guess.
From a certain point of view.
Oh no.
That's what I was waiting for. I think understanding that this is part of a franchise and understanding that we're kind of working through the entire thing here. Sometimes we like substance, Bobby. Sometimes we don't need Indy coming in and saving the village by bringing back a stone when everything I was actually looking thriving in the village and needing the shaman of the village to tell us, oh, we knew everything was good because the world was returning back to normal. Oh, great. Fantastic work, Indy.
I feel like that's kind of the thing that threw me off for this entire movie was with the first one. And I know we're not talking about the other movies yet, but for the first one, I felt that there was a distinctive line of reason around the Ark of the Covenant. Like, why did Indy want it? Why did the Nazis want it? Why did Bartok or whatever want it? Like, it made total sense. There was a setup for what the Ark of the Covenant could do when they talked about like the light of God or whatever. So like whenever it got to the actual sequence, like, oh, this is what it meant. Like, and so like you had this very strong narrative line that was drawn. And I didn't get that with the 3 stones in this. Like the stone was like the life giver of this village, I guess, which is weird because there's tons of other villages probably in the area that are just fine without the stones. But this one particularly needed it. And like, it was just a little thrown in thing why Mala Ram wanted the stone. Like it just didn't hold the same sort of MacGuffin nature that the first movie did.
To destroy the Christian God?
Yeah. Like that was just kind of in there. Like the first movie did a good job setting up. This one, because it was so circumstantial, he just came across this village and found out about it. And it just didn't have the same sort of like wall and under that you get for the first movie or any future movies. Even a movie we're probably going to enjoy watching coming up with a certain Crystal Skull at least had more of a setup for what that was.
Oh, I will be pleasantly surprised if I...
Well, I do want to ask about like Indy and his comment at the end where he said, I do believe now. I do understand its worth to you guys, basically. Is that an arc for him? Like, I didn't really see... Because we talked about like... And we're not talking about the first movie, but the first movie, like, he didn't really change, right? He just like was himself. But in this one, like, they made a point to him of saying like, but okay, I understand now, but I don't recall him not believing in the beginning.
No, especially
Was that-
compared, like, if anything, it would have been Willie, because she's the one who makes this whole comment about magic, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because again, you know, this is, and we didn't really talk about it, but this is a prequel to the first movie. This happens
Yeah.
like 1-ish years before the first movie happened. So he hasn't seen the Ark of the Covenant yet. This might be
Right.
the very first magical experience this guy's had. I didn't watch the TV show, so when he was younger, so I don't know if he ran across it then, but in the essence of the movies, this is his first instance of running across, you know, magical type things. He never came into the notion that he didn't believe in anything mystical or magical or whatever, but Willie did. I think that would have been an interesting plot line. It's like, oh, they're just stones.
Mhm.
But I don't think he ever really said that.
No, he said he went straight in and said, we're going to get these things. And he even said when they were in there, I'm not leaving without these. But he did say fortune and glory. So I don't know if it was, maybe his change was, I want these for myself. And towards the end, he wanted to give them back to the village. But I don't know if that was totally clear to me where that change in belief kind of came from.
Yeah, there's definitely part of me that felt like he probably was just like, I'll just go get one of those other two stones since I know where where they were digging. I'll find it some other way.
I know that was kind of like a drop thread line. The fact that there were two other ones in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like they talked about that for so long that I thought that was going to play into it somehow, but
It did not.
nope.
Well, now there's 4 of them. Maybe that's the next movie.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, before we get into the
Side
future,
quest.
let's talk about the past and let's talk about the present. Bobby, you telling people to watch this?
Yes, watch it first so you could watch it in timeline order.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. We may have skipped doing that part. He's here for the timeline order of the film, not release order. Matt, are you telling the people to watch this movie?
From the sense of, I think it would make you appreciate the actual good ones. I think that it's worth watching. But to be honest, like, I was 3 drinks in and I don't think that I really found it all that enjoyable. So, and these movies are so episodic, right? They're like a TV show. So I don't even less than a TV show. You don't have to watch this movie to watch the other movies. At least with the first movie, there's a little bit of it in, you know, the third and the fourth movie. There's little nods to it. There's no nods to this movie. Like, I feel like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas wanted to forget about this movie. So if you're asking me, watch it or not watch it, I think you can skip.
Oh, sacrilege. If you're sitting down to watch the entire series, this is the one that you're going to be on your phone, maybe doing something else, maybe playing on your Switch while it's on, or more importantly, like Matt said, break out the popcorn, take a shot or two, and just get your mind absolutely numb. That's what I think is happening when you'll watch this one. It's a choice. It's a choice. You make it, not us. You make the choice this time. As always.
But watch it.
As always, thank you for listening. And remember, Kali Ma protects us. We are her children. We pledge our devotion to her with an offering of flesh and blood.